All right, today we're headed to Maharashtra, India, to check out an ancient marvel that almost messes with your mind. We're talking about the Ajanta Caves, a place that wasn't built up with stone, but was carved out of it. Let's just jump right in. So first off, let's just try to get a handle on the scale here. We are not talking about one or two little caves. Nope. We're talking about 30 individual monuments, all cut out of rock, all carved into this massive, sweeping, horseshoe-shaped cliff over hundreds of years. And here's the thing that's just mind-blowing. It's how they did it. These huge temples and monasteries, they weren't built with bricks and stone. They were excavated. Just imagine for a second hollowing out a mountain of solid rock with what were basically simple hand tools. It's an absolutely staggering feat of engineering. So that leaves us with two big questions, right? First, how in the world did they pull this off? And second, maybe the bigger question, why? What drove people to spend centuries on this incredible project? Well, the answers are waiting for us inside. The story of how this happened starts right here, at this incredible cliff looking out over the Waghora River. For hundreds and hundreds of years, this was a sanctuary, a place of solitude for Buddhist monks, and for the master artisans who worked miracles in stone to give them a place to live and pray. But these weren't just random holes in a cliff, you know? They were purpose-built. Each and every cave was carefully designed with a specific job to do, serving a whole spiritual community. They were really living, breathing spaces with two main functions. So you had two main designs. On the one hand, you had the Chaityagrihas. Think of them as the big, grand prayer halls, almost like cathedrals carved right out of the earth for everyone to worship in together. And then you had the Viharas, which were the monasteries. These were the living quarters, filled with small, simple cells where monks would actually live, sleep, and meditate. Now, the architecture is amazing, no doubt about it. But honestly, the stone itself is just the canvas here. The real soul of Ajanta, the real answer to that big question of why, well, that's painted right on the walls. And to really get what you're looking at, you need to know about the Jataka tales. These are incredible, ancient stories all about the Buddha's past lives, and each one has a moral or a spiritual lesson baked in. So the murals at Ajanta, they're basically like a massive visual library of these tales, meant to teach and inspire everyone who came through. Inside, it's just an explosion of color. You've got these stunning murals and frescoes covering literally everything, bringing all those Jataka stories to life. Then there are countless statues of the Buddha in all these different poses, meditating, teaching. And then you start noticing these other figures, these really detailed sculptures of bodhisattvas, beings who are on the path to enlightenment. Their very presence is a huge clue that something was changing here. And yeah, that change is the whole key to understanding this place. You see, Ajanta wasn't built in one go. It happened in two completely separate phases, with centuries of silence in between. And that gap, it tells us a pretty fascinating story about a huge shift in the Buddhist faith itself. Just look at this timeline, it's pretty wild. The first wave of work starts way, way back in the 2nd century BCE, and then nothing. For hundreds of years, the whole project just stops. Then, bam, in the 5th century CE, it starts up again. That long pause is actually just as important as the work itself. And this is why that long break is so important. The early caves, which came from the Hinayana tradition, they're much simpler. In that school of thought, the Buddha was a great teacher, but not a god, so the art is all symbolic. You won't find statues of him. But the later caves from the Mahayana phase, a total 180. By then, the Buddha was seen as divine, so the art just explodes with detail. Huge, ornate statues and incredibly vivid paintings. The caves are like a physical timeline of faith, etched right into the rock. So, when you put it all together, what's the big takeaway? What's the legacy of a place like this? Well, it's simple, really. The Ajanta Caves aren't just a piece of Indian history. They're a treasure that belongs to the whole world. I mean, experts call them among the most significant surviving examples of ancient Indian art. And that's not just fancy talk.
It's a recognition that in the entire story of human creativity, there is truly nothing else on Earth quite like Ajanta.
And the rest of the world caught on officially in 1983. That's the year UNESCO designated the Ajanta Caves a World Heritage Site, which basically sealed their status as a place of universal importance for all of humanity. So if there is one thing to take away from all this, it's this. Ajanta is a masterpiece of religious art. It's a jaw-dropping achievement in architecture, and it's a whole library of ancient stories carved into a mountain. It's a physical record of how a faith can evolve, and it still is awe-inspiring today as it was centuries ago.
And that kind of leaves you with one last question, doesn't it? The people who made Ajanta, they told their stories of faith and what it means to be human in the most permanent way they could. It just makes you wonder, what stories are we leaving behind in stone? What will our era's legacy be? Anyway, something to chew on. Thanks for joining me on this one.